Welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I, of course, am Mr. Warren Hayes, and it is time to talk about professional wrestling for a couple of hours here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes. We're on your favorite podcast application. Thank you very much for joining me this week. And look, if you're listening to this on YouTube, I wouldn't mind if you hit the like button and get this video up in the algorithm. Just like if you're listening to this on the podcast side, you know, a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and a 5-star rating on Spotify, both go a long way as well. So I'd appreciate a little boost on that front. It's always appreciated. Thank you all so much for all your support and tuning in and, you know, just being alive. Listen, we've got ourselves a packed show tonight, so I don't want to squander too much of your time by doing a long, drawn-out introduction. This is what we're doing here today. We're reviewing two shows. We're reviewing the New Japan New Beginning in Osaka show, and we're reviewing AEW's Grand Slam Australia, which, you know, if it was your typical humdrum Saturday Night Collision, I probably wouldn't do it, but this was a big show and there was some really good stuff that happened on the show. So I figured, well, might as well go ahead and review that. So we've got all of that. We're talking Brody King to start things off though. So let's get to it. Thank you very much for being here. Let me walk you through how my day started. How about that? Do you want to know how my day started? I woke up this morning, gave a good stretch in my bed. You know, my alarm goes off. My alarm is birds. It's a chorus of songbirds just tweeting along, singing along. And it's lovely. And it's one of these crescendo things where it starts really, really low and then, you know, and amplifies gently, you know, over time. So it's always very nice. I always wake up in a good mood because I like birds. I like birds quite a bit. And to me, this is a lovely way, you know, just for your first senses to be awakened, which is your auditory system. The best way to do that is with, you know, just nice little birds. And then I turn around and then I reach over for Juno, my big old doggy. She sleeps up with me. And I start, you know, I rub her tummy and she's all like, she's super happy, right? And I slip out of bed, you know, I sit on the side of the bed, I do one of these, you know, and I get up, go to the bathroom, do a little bit of business. And I come back, Juno's still waiting for me. So I come back, have a seat on the bed, rub her tummy some more, you know, scratch her ears and all of that. Then finally I put my glasses on, grab the phone. You know, I have my phone in one hand and the dog, you know, with the, you know, I'm rubbing the dog, petting the dog with the other. And then I unlock the phone and I pop open the blue sky. And the first thing I see is this, an article, a post, I should say, on Blue Sky from Cultaholic with the title, Report! Warner Bros. Discovery blocks Brody King from AEW Dynamite following fuck ice chants. I'm like, what? So I'm going to read you the original story. Cultaholic has done the right thing and has updated the article, but we're following a story here. There's a tale here. So I'm going to read the original story that assaulted my senses this morning. Brody King was absent from Wednesday night's episode of AEW Dynamite and it was reportedly, let me start over again. Jesus Christ, Warren. Brody King was absent from Wednesday night's episode of AEW Dynamite, and it reportedly wasn't a Tony Khan decision not to have him on the show. According to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, AEW minority owner and TV partner Warner Bros. Discovery made the call not to have Brody King on Dynamite due to the prospect of further fuck ice chants. Warner Bros. Discovery reportedly wanted to avoid upsetting WWE Hall of Famer and United States President Donald Trump. That is such a good line, by the way. Shout out to Aiden, right? Aiden Gibbons. That is such a good fucking line. WWE Hall of Famer and also President of the United States. Props to that. That's really funny. That is really funny. Okay, but then I take the time to applaud him, and then I lose my spot. Okay. Upsetting WWE Hall of Famer and United States President Donald Trump due to the pending Warner Bros. Discovery acquisition by Netflix, which still requires regulatory approval. Here is the quote from one Dave Meltzer. The deal is that they didn't want the fans in the arena to be chanting that. If Brody came out, there was that risk. When he comes back, it will happen again. I don't know how they're going to handle it. This is, again, not a Tony call. This is from above. You know what it is. Nobody wants to get on Trump's bad side. If it wasn't for that, nobody would care. It's just a chant. But unfortunately, they've, WBD, got a company they're trying to sell and get regulatory approval from a guy who is going to take that stuff personal. That's just how it is. No Brody King on the show when he absolutely, of course, Brody King and MJF should have had a segment on the show. Both MJF and Brody King were absent from AEW Dynamite, and their AEW World title match at Grand Slam Australia was promoted through a video package on Wednesday night. King earned the title shot courtesy of his squash win over MJF on last week's Dynamite at the Pearl Theater in Las Vegas, Nevada. Fans chanted "fuck ICE" before the match, with Brody King having previously worn an "Abolish ICE" t-shirt at pro wrestling events. The chants received mainstream attention, something people in AEW were said to be happy about. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. So immediately, I'm sitting on the side of my bed, and I notice that I've stopped petting my dog because all that I have in mind right now, the only thing I'm thinking of is, oh, Jesus Christ. No, what a fucking day this is going to turn out to be. Then at the same time, I'm like, oh, content. This is great for the stream. This is the kind of stuff where I will always be excited for. Not going to lie. As you know, I've said it multiple times. I love the chaos. I live for the chaos. The chaos is good for what I do. But nonetheless, then it's like parsing through the horrible takes and whatnot. I'm like, oh my God, this is just gonna, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm putting stuff together, and I'm wondering, it's kind of putting some things in perspective as I think about it. I'm thinking about the whole thing. I'll put Brody's picture back up here. And I'm thinking about the whole thing, and I'm like, okay, well, that explains the weird call out that Kenny Omega did during his promo with Swerve Strickland, where he said that Brody King was the most dangerous man in AEW, right? You remember Swerve started to say it, and then Kenny cut him off, and you could tell like it was a little off the cuff. You could tell because Swerve was kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? He was taken by surprise by Kenny just jumping in and said, oh yeah, that's right. That's right. You're the most dangerous man in AEW, when in fact the most dangerous man in AEW is Brody King. And I'm like, that's a little weird. That's a little weird. And not that Kenny Omega shouldn't be putting over Brody King. That's not what I mean. What I mean when I say weird is the execution of it felt a little off. It did feel off the cuff. It did not feel planned. It felt like Kenny sort of snuck in the line, sort of had to react fast to get the line in. And it felt out of place. You know what I mean? Like it didn't flow with the rest of the thing, and we didn't even address it. And Swerve definitely didn't arrest, he just moved on from it. He's like, nevertheless, or whatever the fuck, right? So I was sitting there thinking to myself, that's a weird line. Why bring up Brody King? Why in this circumstance here, when you're trying to build your feud here? Why are you bringing in Brody King from left field as an example of someone who's truly dangerous, right? And I'm like, it didn't sit quite well with me. And again, not because Kenny Omega was putting over Brody King. That's fine. I think more people should be putting over Brody King. I'm okay with that. we've been Brody King advocates here on the Mr. Warren Hayes show for a long fucking time. Anyway, there was that little segment. And so then I'm putting two and two together in my head. It's like, oh, so that's why Kenny did it. He's basically saying, because Brody was denied from being on television because of the suits who didn't like the fact that, there were fuck ICE chants going around, and they were afraid that, the president of the United States would get upset at that, right? Because, being a very thick-skinned individual, Kenny saw that as Brody being dangerous because his what he's promoting is dangerous, quote unquote, right? Because it requires you to resist, to stand up, to do something to challenge the status of what's going on, right? So those kinds of thoughts can be dangerous. So that's what I'm thinking, right? That's what I'm putting together. Later on during the day, Warner Bros. Goes out full force, brother, with a statement. And they sent this to everyone. Everyone. Warner Bros. Discovery denies network prevented Brody King from appearing on AEW Dynamite to avoid fuck ICE chants. This is what happened. We're just going to read the statement off of the Post Wrestling website here. But essentially, they denied it. They sent out a statement to every piece of wrestling media. Okay. The usual suspects got it. Voices of Wrestling got it. Everyone fucking got this statement. They canvassed everyone with this statement. Here's the statement verbatim, the full statement. Warner Bros. Discovery did not have any involvement in Brody King's upcoming AEW schedule. Any speculation to the contrary is categorically false. Brody is scheduled to appear during the next AEW event, which will air this Saturday on TNT and HBO Max. So that sort of creates a firestorm. There was already a firestorm to begin with, right? And, I don't want to get into this today because we do have a few things that I'd like to go over and so on and so forth, but we're gonna put this one away because at some point we are going to talk about it. But there was even before this was released, there was already a firestorm of people accusing Dave of lying, of saying, oh well, it's bullshit. He's all making this shit up, right? Which is a shame, right? But there are multiple reasons as to why we're in 2026. Dave Meltzer, the last, like the only living human to have recorded professional wrestling news and events going on since the 1970s up to now, is considered an untrustworthy source, is considered to be somewhat of a bozo in certain circles, that ultimately doesn't have the credibility in the eyes of fans. And there's multiple reasons for that. I will 100% acquiesce that there's some of these criticisms about Dave, not criticism, but some of these feelings. There we go. Some of these feelings regarding Dave are legitimate and are born from things Dave has done and said in the past. Sometimes just messing up stories. It has happened. Sometimes just the way he covers them, which isn't quite elegant. There's multiple reasons there's multiple things upon which you can criticize Dave Meltzer. So once he ends up, once he tells everyone, oh, well, WBD kept Brody King off the air, there's a whole segment of wrestling fans who are like, oh, well, fuck Dave Meltzer. All he says is lies. But it's not all that. It's not that he's the only thing he ever says is lies. It's preposterous. That's not how it works. He wouldn't have had the tenure that he has if he was just going around spreading lies all the time, because he does have a track record of saying legitimate things. And here I was saying, let's not get into, any reason to sort of break down this Dave Meltzer a hate squad that exists out there, but here I am doing it. But nonetheless, everyone was out in full force even before this was put out. So imagine what happened after, when this statement was put out. Dave was just like completely torn to shreds. And I myself sort of sat back and like, you know what? Dave should have just stayed away from this. Dave should have just stayed away. Because the problem, I think the main problem that Dave ran into here is something that has happened to him in the past, with stories that have either socio-political or just plain old cultural implications. Like, he doesn't know exactly how to go about covering it. He's been covering wrestling for so long, and he is so wrestling brained that I don't think he quite understood the scope of what it meant in this circumstance for AEW fans, and the and ICE in general, and the feeling that is permeating throughout the lives of millions of Americans, and how a lot of people are just like, not necessarily supportive of it, right? I don't think he had, I think he just didn't have the proper social political context to really present this in a delicate manner, I should say, as opposed to just talking about it with pure wrestling brain. Because these are two very, very sensitive, very hot topics right now, online and everywhere. That's essentially it. That's essentially how he ended up into this mess, if you ask me. It's just he didn't know how, he wasn't able to properly cover the story within the context of what's happening in the world around him and the real world implications of it outside of pro wrestling, which is why this weekend as well, he was saying things. He was on Wrestling Observer Radio. Was it Friday, or, because I don't think he does Wrestling Observer Radio on the weekend, but like on Friday or something, he was saying things to the effect that he had talked to people, he had heard from people in AEW that, they weren't quite excited about the ICE chants, they not quite sure they wanted those to continue. So I think he had conversations with people in AEW over the past week or so, where he was basically told, where he was basically told, and maybe very informally, just chatting, and they're like, yeah, I mean, the ICE chants are great and all, but man, if these continue, that could get us into trouble. You never know with Donald Trump, you never know with this administration. So, fans can chant whatever they want, but hopefully it won't get us into trouble. Just something like that. But Dave and his brain, his wrestling brain, is like, oh, I've been told that, the ICE chants, that there's people in AEW who are fearful that the ICE chants might get them into trouble. And it's like, no, we're just shooting the shit. We're just talking about a scenario, a fictional scenario in which we might just like get into trouble. It could have been that kind of conversation. And then Dave hangs on to that. Then he sees that Brody King doesn't show up last night on Dynamite. And maybe he puts one and one together, and he and his brain creates the scenario where it's like, but maybe in his head it was probably Warner Bros. decided to not put Brody on television. Maybe that's the scenario that he concocted in his head, but he never said on Wrestling Observer Radio, this is speculation, I believe. No, he presented it pretty much as fact. If we just read the quote, never does he say, I wouldn't be surprised if, I say that sometimes, where I'm speculating, where I'm like, and sometimes it's based on things that I know, where I go, I wouldn't be surprised if this happens, type of thing. But you're not out there reporting something. You're not out there saying, oh, this is absolutely what happened. And that's the impression that Dave gave on Wrestling Observer Radio this morning. So I can understand why some people are absolutely upset about it, especially since in the meantime, I think we're jumping ahead. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Let's backtrack a little bit. I as you can tell, I'm very animated about this. But back to the statement. The statement from a lot of people, there's one word in the statement here that had a lot of people question, what exactly do they mean by upcoming? Warner Bros. Discovery did not have any involvement in Brody King's upcoming AEW schedule, because that seems to imply that Warner Bros. Doesn't have any involvement in Brody King's schedule as of now. Moving forward, we have no involvement. So we needed some clarification. A lot of us were like, I think this is this word might be a little revealing here. It might mean something. So we needed a little clarity here. And I think the first person who actually did reach out to the Warner Bros. Spokesperson was Rich Craich of the flagship podcast over there on Voices of Wrestling. And he flat out asked them, let me pull it up here. I think this is a free post on their Patreon. Hopefully it is. Hopefully. Don't get mad at me, Rich, if this is a paid post. I apologize, but I think it's free. So what Rich did is that he just followed up with, as any good reporter and journalist should do. He gets the press release. There's something that's not clear. So he followed up with the representative and asked them the following question. When you say upcoming, does that mean Warner Bros. Discovery had nothing to do with his absence from yesterday's show? The Warner Bros. Discovery rep replied with one word: correct. So we had we had 100% we had the full clarification here from the representative at Warner Brothers, who basically flat out said, no, we had nothing to do with this, and put it on the record, and it's out there. Talk to a journalist. And then I saw Brandon Thurston also reach out. So the news spread that the upcoming term was misused in this context, essentially, because WBD had nothing to do with Brody being in or on or off Dynamite last night. So what did all of this lead to in the end? Well, Dave Meltzer going on Twitter and posting a very strange tweet. Those at AEW have said nobody from Warner Bros. Discovery asked them not to use Brody King on last night's show. And this was just how it was booked, to only use him in a video package. We had heard over the weekend that there were concerns about how much publicity the situation had gotten from the Warner Bros. Discovery side, but those at AEW said that they were not told to not put him on the show. And he completely contradicts his own reporting from earlier in the day this morning, which is bonkers. He essentially says the complete opposite. Oh, no, we didn't hear from anyone. And no, Brody wasn't asked to be off the show by Warner Bros. Discovery. That just wasn't it. It's like, what the fuck? Like, at the very least, if he had started the tweet by saying, allow me to post a retraction or whatever the fuck. And you're like, oh, okay. But no, he's just like, I don't understand this. Anyway, it's very bizarre. It's an extremely bizarre situation. The question that it leaves for me, right? The question that is still lingering, and that I I feel that we're missing in this circumstance right here is the following. Who fed Dave the original news and why? Because contrary to popular opinion, and I know everyone out there says, loves to say that Dave has no sources and he just says bullshit. He pulls things out of his ass. He makes shit up. And that, like, those are just like your purest haters who have no real arguments or criticisms to levy on Dave. So they'll just say whatever, right? When you cannot have a career as long as Dave Meltzer has in this business by going around and just like in news, just spewing lies constantly. You just can't. Why? Because your sources would dry up, because no one would want to talk to you, because everyone would be afraid to talk to you, and you'd get sued. And on top of that, you would get sued. So who told Dave that Brody wasn't on? And there's really two ways to go about it, right? There's two paths. There's someone who flat out told him, right? Or there's someone, or he just connected dots in his head, like I was talking about a few minutes earlier, where he was just like, oh, well, I heard that there was maybe some worry that Warner Bros. Discovery wouldn't be too excited because of all the publicity that the fuck ice chants are getting, that might put them in hot water or whatever. And then he went and put one and one together. But could that be it? Could that be the situation where he just flat out but just put some information together, coalesced it in his brain, and communicated it on his morning podcast, his morning radio show, in the poorest way possible? Could that be the way that he went about doing it? Or did someone feed him the news, the fake news at this point? And then why? Why do it in the first place? And I don't have a good answer. I don't have a good answer why anyone would feed Dave Meltzer that type of information. And if someone did feed that to Dave, well, it's a source clearly that Dave trusts. And if they made it up, well, that source just got fucked. Dave is never going to turn to that source ever again. And we've talked about this in the past, right? Most people who are sources for the dirt sheet writers are people who have an agenda, that have a little something that they have to push forward. And or they're building a capital of trust with the journalist by saying, look, I will feed you accurate information. And then someday when the news is required, when it's required, maybe you can do a little something for me. Maybe you can maybe you can spread some good news about me or whatever, right? And I'm not saying they're saying that intentionally to the journalist, but they in their brains are saying, well, maybe one day when it's time for me to really use my contacts to push an agenda, well, I'll have these people's trust. Again, not them necessarily coming in to say lies, but to use that trust for something. That's how it goes. So whoever was Dave's source on this, if this was the case, if there was indeed a source, that source is done. Dave will likely never believe that person moving forward ever again. For Warner Brothers to come out and put out a statement to say, no, this was false. Pretty incredible. So that's where we're at. But the last thing I want to point out here before we put this whole saga to bed, where Brody King is still fine. As far as we know, he's still, employed and on his way to Australia, and he's going to have his big match, and, and everything will be hunky-dory, right? The one thing that I have to keep in the one thing that I find curious, that I really, really do find curious, and particularly from a lot of people hanging out on Blue Sky and whatnot, where the majority of the time there will be a profound distrust of corporations. Oh, you can't trust these people. Well, they'll say what they need to say, and so on and so forth. they'll be, these individuals will be very anti-capitalist and whatnot, right? And then in this circumstance, a corporation puts out a statement and everyone goes, ha, see, here's the truth. Now, I'm not saying that the statement was a lie. This is not what I'm saying, especially since there's a statement, an official statement that goes on the record. Normally, this kind of shit is able to be backed up by a certain amount of evidence, right? That's usually what it is. What I find curious is that a lot of AEW fans immediately jumped in to say, ha, well, there you go. See, the company says it's true, so it must be true. Just because it fit their narrative that they're not their narrative, but they're concerned that Brody King, the beloved wrestler Brody King, was potentially in danger because of his progressive views. And that I find a little iffy. Dare I use the H word that starts with, the H word that finishes with hypocritical? Dare I say? I kind of feel like a lot of people are just deciding to trust a corporation here only because it suits them, because like, oh, well, there you go. Everything's clean. We knew everything was okay. Be very curious to see what happens next. Next time David Zaslav does something on behalf of WBD, and are people still going to like it? Are people going to still stick up for it? Because I kind of feel if WWE was in this type of situation, your first reflex would be to distrust what WWE is officially puts out, right? That, at least that's my default mode. I try to be like that with most companies, regardless. Most corporations, I'm very distrusting of corporations in general and their public relations. Why? Well, because I work in PR, I know how things work on this level. So I always try to take things I do my best to take things at face value, but there's just an inherent mistrust, and I think mistrust when it comes to public relations and what companies, corporations, politicians, whatever they say. I think it's healthy to be skeptical. I think it's very, very healthy. It's a sign of intelligence, in my opinion, and it's healthy. Just a question, not necessarily to say it's all fucking lies, burn it to the ground. That's not necessarily, you do. I mean, if you want to do that, knock yourself out. But that's not necessarily the path I'm going down. Just wondering, scratching your chin, saying, well, I wonder why they're saying this. I wonder what this means. I wonder what, just why are they putting out a statement now? Why are they releasing why are they contacting the press about this specifically at this moment? Because most of the time these things are all fucking calculated. So there was a reason. I'm going to go out on a limb here. And again, just out of pure experience, Warner Bros. Went out on a limb here today to denounce a false report, right? They did not do that to protect Brody King or to exonerate Brody King. They didn't do that. There has to be an incentive for Warner Bros. Discovery to do this. Think about it for a second. Just take a minute to realize the scope of what this is. Warner Bros. Discovery, huge media conglomerate, huge movie studios, TV studios, music, networks, cable, the whole shebang, $1 billion valuation. A huge company puts out a statement because a pro wrestler on their network was rumored to not show up because Warner Bros. Would have put their foot down, and they needed to dispute that because one pro wrestler didn't show up one night and they got accused of that, of being the perpetrators, why would they do that? Now you can easily say, in a snap, easily say, well, they just wanted to protect their own image. I don't disagree, but think of the scale again. This is Warner Bros. Discovery. This is AEW. This is overall. I'm sorry if I'm about to break any misconceptions here, or preconceptions, I should say. AEW, small potatoes in the Warner Bros. Pantheon of stuff that they own. Not the tiniest property they own, right? It's probably some HGTV bullshit somewhere, right? It's probably like Ghost Hunters or some bullshit. But it's not the thing that it's not the fucking Avengers, right? It's not Stranger Things. It's AEW. And if one wrestler, a pro wrestler, gets into hot water and they're like, they feel they have to step in to say, no, we did not keep him from going on. What's their end game in doing this? And I don't understand it. I do not understand it. Why did they feel like they had to protect themselves and essentially say, we're not going to punish anyone who may have been at the source of these fuck ice chants that were heard on television? This company here who is looking to who is looking to merge with Netflix and needs government to be on their side to do it. A government which is known to be very thin-skinned when it comes to people voicing displeasure about who they are and what they do. So what are they doing? I can't put my finger on it, but I can promise you this was not Warner Bros. Discovery throwing themselves in front of the bus to protect Brody King. That's not why they were doing this. They did it for self-serving reasons, and they are not apparent to me at this time. And it just so happens that they were able to, make sure that Brody King was okay. Because if they had to do the opposite, they would have 100% thrown Brody King under the bus. I guarantee it. 100% sure of it. Remember Jay Briscoe? Didn't want anything to do with him on TV. So anyway, that's where we're at. I'm leaving you with that thought. Just keep that in mind, and question everything. Just a healthy skepticism is good. Healthy skepticism is good. All right, let's review AEW Grand Slam 2026 that took place on February 14, 2026 at the Kudos Bank Arena there in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Kudos. I'm assuming that's how you spell it. That's how you pronounce it, right? Because the spelling is Kudos. Like there's a vowel missing there. There's just a vowel missing for that. But one would assume that that's how you pronounce it. Kudos. That doesn't sound right. But then again, Australia is a silly place. They name towns stuff like Dubbo and Spanker's Knot. Another classic, Wagga Wagga, right? Like these are, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna chalk it up to this being cultural and just move on here from how to pronounce Kudos. I'm pretty sure I have it right. It's just, it is what it is. Listen, the show in about itself, wasn't this a great little pro wrestling show? Wasn't this just fantastic to sit down and watch and enjoy? I thought it was. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Just a great show from top to bottom, just packed with everything that makes AEW really, really connect and click these days. On the weekly AEW Dynamite reviews for the past, easily month and a half, I've been talking about how excellent AEW has been, like nonstop, just week after week, really just like top tier wrestling television time after time after time, just focusing on everything that they do best, creating some stories and some angles that are just fantastic, that are compelling, plus using their top stars and making the top of the card feel exciting, and then it trickles down everywhere else. Then, that kind of thing sort of gets everyone excited and involved into it. And here we go again, another great television offering from AEW. Just a complete and utter roll. There's nothing else that compares on a weekly basis to the consistency and quality of professional wrestling that we have in America, or even that we have in North America, or I would even argue elsewhere. As AEW has been, it's been so consistently good, easy to watch shows. You're looking at your clock and you're like, holy smokes, okay, there's 90 minutes that have already scooted by. It's just fantastic. It's a fantastic string of success for All Elite Wrestling these days, and they continued with the Australia show with a really hot crowd of 7,029 people in attendance according to WrestleTix. So there's an appetite for AEW, and as they continue to do top shelf stuff like this, I think just naturally the buzz is going to generate itself. People are going to get excited, and more people are going to watch. More and more people are going to buy tickets. And speaking about more and more people watching, this took place on Valentine's Day. So that's going to be a challenge. A Valentine's Day on a Saturday night, is just complete death, I would assume, for television ratings. You're likely going out on a date on a Saturday night. What are you talking about? When Valentine's Day lands on a Tuesday, maybe some people will go out, but there'll be a lot of people who be like, honey, let's go. I have nice reservations for us on Friday or Saturday. We'll celebrate it properly, because tomorrow's a school day or a work day, and we can't go out and hang out, and we're on a schedule and we can't come back and fool around all that much, So, there's a lot of reasons as to why this why a Saturday, St. Valentine's Day, is just going to be super duper rotten for the company. And I mean, look, this was exciting. This was good. This was a very, very good, very, very good special branded show that AEW put on. And look, I don't necessarily want to do comparisons here, but here we go. I'm going to do, here's the first comparison. Remember Battle of the Belts? Remember when Tony Khan decided, or announced, I should say, that there would be quarterly, special branded shows called Battle of the Belts, and everyone was getting big Clash of Champions vibes, and we were all excited for that, because the idea of having these quarterly, big time, near pay-per-view quality matches or shows with, all the titles on the line and whatnot, that was a really interesting prospect. And Battle of the Belts just end up being like complete and utter fillers, things that, I don't even recall a good Battle of the Belts, one where from top to bottom I'm like, oh yeah, this was all, no, it was all just filler. It was all just, nonsense. So I look at this show and I'm thinking to myself, this is probably what Tony Khan had in mind, was cooking up in his brain when he was thinking about the Battle of the Belts. And instead of doing it for the Battle of the Belts, where we're doing it for the Grand Slam show, the Grand Slam Mexico show that we did last year was along the same lines, which is very, very exciting. But on this show specifically, the titles were defended everywhere. We even had a number one contendership match here. Like, everything was excellent, and really did show that the Battle of the Belts concept was always poorly executed when you look at this in retrospect. And then, of course, well, if you want to do a comparison to what WWE does with the Saturday night's main event stuff, I mean, which is highly touted as this super duper special, you know, and how WWE promotes those shows as being extra special. And they all, you know, when you look at that and despite the promotion, and WWE promotes them as, you know, extra special, and then they air, the shows actually happen, and people, including their fans, sort of go, well, that this again was a whole lot of nothing, and it was a whole lot of nothing to the point that NBC took the show off of the Saturday nights to just stuff it down on Peacock. Don't ever think that was not a cancellation / demotion, because it was. This was not. I am convinced. Look, don't go down the path thinking that, oh, WWE was okay with this transfer. No. They want it to be on network television. They are probably not super content with Saturday night's main event being relegated to the Peacock. Anyway, with the Saturday night main event show falling flat and the audience not feeling well served, essentially, a special show like Grand Slam just runs laps around it. Like it just completely obliterated, you know, the competition, like event for event, if you want to do that comparison. They're on two completely different planets, two utterly, completely different planes of existence even. This was such a fun show. And it seems like it was overall a very good success for AEW. They even did the house show the next day. I'm recording this on Sunday, so I've already seen a few clips of the house show event where, you know, you can tell like the wrestlers are taking it more easy. They're having a little more fun since it's not on television. You know, a little exchange between Jon Moxley and Orange Cassidy where Mox is doing the shin kicks and putting his hands in his pockets and all that stuff. You know, everyone's just more relaxed, having a good time. Yes, I did hear that the Inspiration have been signed. I have thoughts about that I will probably share on stream. This is not the moment to talk about that because there's so much good stuff that we should be covering on this show that you know, we should focus on that instead of the Inspiration getting signed. So why don't we go right to it? Let's start this review talking about the first match, the opening match, Jon Moxley and Konosuke Takeshita going to a time limit draw for the AEW Continental Championship. I thought this match rocked. I thought this was a fantastic match where you know, starts off at a measured pace, I guess. People, you know, just having a good even Steven start between the two. Mox is going for some grappling early on. And then we move on to some really physical stuff, things that you would be expecting from these two gentlemen to start landing on each other. We get into some really good strike exchanges on top of that. They fight on the floor. Moxley lands a pile driver when they get back into the ring. We get some big power bombs by Konosuke Takeshita as well. Konosuke Takeshita with some exploder suplexes, following up with a running knee, which was a really fun combination. And then they're basically countering out of each other's moves, start landing some headbutts, and Mox opens himself up hard way on that one, I can only imagine. And then we saw him a little later on in the evening, and he's got he had a bit of a mouse right under his eye. And we're getting the countdown as of 5 minutes. We start getting the countdown and things start to feel a little more urgent. And the guys really followed the vibe of the match tremendously of the countdown. And when we hit the 30-second mark, crowd is up on their feet. They're cheering. They really want a winner here. They're looking for someone to get the big one, to get the big win. And we get some big strikes. We're getting some pinfalls with some kickouts at one, but time expires. They just can't do it. We hit the time limit. Moxley retains, of course, and this was a 4-star match. And I've seen a lot of people say that they were very disappointed in this match because they figured that it would probably go harder. My counter argument to that is it probably could go harder, and it probably will go harder at AEW Revolution, because I think we are angling for a rematch. I think that, especially with the post-match angle that they had, very brief, where Mox seems to be negotiating with the ref, and the ref goes, "No, there's nothing I can do." Mox and Takeshita go nose to nose again, and Mox shoves him, but then Takeshita belts him and then hits the Raging Fire and gets the crowd all fired up as well. He's upset. Mox is upset. Everyone is upset. I think we're getting the rematch at Revolution. This is something that we've seen Tony Khan do in the past, you know, where you'll have the one match occur, which will be a very good match. But, you know, again, you're kind of left a little bit on your, you're left a little bit on your appetite, where it's like, I probably could have gone a little harder. And the next thing you know, he books it for the pay-per-view. So I think the guys were saving themselves for that big match. And this type of situation here just adds a little more heat, adds a little more expectation. I think I like this kind of booking. I think it's good. You get round one and still telling the story that Jon Moxley can't beat this kid, right? And then we'll be going into Revolution with that in the back of the mind, right? With Jon Moxley's like, look, I cannot put this guy away. And I still think the more interesting thing to do with John in this circumstance would be to have Takeshita win the Continental title, then go back to having issues with Kazuchika Okada, and then he and Okada eventually meet, perhaps even at All In. One with the international the international title, and the other one with the Continental Crown, and then they both come together, and we get the Undisputed Championship again, which Konosuke Takeshita finally wins by beating Okada, his rival, right? Essentially, I'd be very okay with that, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to go down that run. Now that would mean Jon Moxley having a title reign that didn't have any successful defenses, which would be strange. It would be a little odd, but it wouldn't bother me all that much. It's Jon Moxley. It's like, it would be absolutely fine. Then we had the Babes of Wrath successfully retain the AEW Women's World Tag Team Championship by defeating Megabad. So yeah, I mean, look, this was Harley Cameron's big homecoming as well. Lots of the Australian members of the AEW roster were appearing on this show, and I thought this was a good match. I see a lot of. I have a feeling. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I think that in a lot of my circles and the people I hang around with, and I look on Cage Match as well, I feel like everyone has an instant bias when it comes to Harley Cameron. Now, I'm not going to pretend that Harley Cameron is, the next Akira Hokuto. I think she's a below average pro wrestler. But I also think that she has improved. I mean, the company she keeps right now in with her tag team in AEW cannot but not make you get better in this circumstance. I think she's had terrible matches in the past, but over the past couple of defenses that the Babes of Wrath have had, I haven't seen her be completely detrimental or just drag the match down. Yes, she's still really fucking green, and I don't think she's that great a pro wrestler. I think, like I said, I think she's below average, but she's been carrying her weight, and I think the Ricky Morton role for her suits her really, really well. But you can also feel clearly that there's a lot of stuff that gets set up in the match that is done to work around Harley's limitations, as opposed to someone like Willow Nightingale or Megan Bayne, who are well-rounded, good to great pro wrestlers. They just do the typical thing here. So the point that I'm making is that I think that by default, there's a lot of people who critique matches and look at matches who see a Harley Cameron match and already have their arms crossed and go, this is not Harley Cameron, she stinks. I think that's how it goes. But as for me, I see her being used to the best of her strengths, and like I said, I don't think she was detrimental here. I don't necessarily think she was particularly outstanding. She did very good Harley Cameron stuff, and she's a great seller. Like I said, I think the Ricky Morton role suits her fine. The beating that she took from Bayne and Ford was fantastic. I even thought Penelope Ford was good in this match. So I have a feeling like a lot of people are extremely unfair or come in ready to harshly judge Babes of Wrath matches for multiple reasons. And the main significant reason being, well, Harley Cameron and her abilities, right? But I don't know. I don't hate this. I didn't hate this match at all, and in fact, I thought it was quite good. I went and gave this a 3.5, and I think part of it why I was so jazzed up about it is because the crowd was super into it. This was a very hot crowd, but they were clearly behind Harley here. And it was good. It was just a good, clean pro wrestling match. And of course, the highlights always happen when Megan is in there, when Willow is in there. I mean, these are high level. These are high level upper crust pro wrestlers of the women's division. So of course, whenever they get involved, whenever they start doing things, you can see more easily. You can see the polish. You can see the experience that comes into play. Look, I mean, Harley Cameron hit a Canadian destroyer, right? I mean, when I tell, just like Ricky Morton. Remember a couple of years ago when old ass Ricky Morton pulled a Canadian destroyer in the middle of the ring, and I think that thing was clipped and passed around tons of times. I'm telling you guys, she's perfect for the Ricky Morton role. Now, just to be very clear, I am not saying that Ricky Morton was a below average pro wrestler. Ricky Morton was a very, very, very good pro wrestler. It's just, the role that he fulfilled in his team was, to take a convincing ass beating. And I think Harley is good at that. And then she clocks out some offense. I think the Cazadora stuff that she does is very mid. I don't think it's all that good, and she's learning on the job is what she's doing, right? I think that's the fairest criticism you can give, because I don't think she was as terrible as people like to make her. I don't think she was as terrible as the people who make her out to be like this dog shit pro wrestler was in this match. That's a sentence for you. Anyway, big power moves. The ladies are doing dives to the floor and whatnot. It's a good little match. And it ends with Cameron getting the backslide pinfall victory on Penelope Ford to a big rousing cheer from the crowd. So, as opposed to last year's Grand Slam where Harley came up short because she was challenging Mercedes Moné for the TBS title. Fast forward to now, and now she gets her win in front of her home crowd. I still think, as I mentioned when I was previewing the show, when I was previewing the show on stream earlier this week, I still think they should have dropped the titles. I still think that we need to free up Willow Nightingale to do singles wrestler things. We need to free her up to do specifically that, because I think right now there's a lot of interesting singles matches that we're not fulfilling right now. With Willow, some defenses and whatnot in favor of the tag team titles. So I think you might as well, because I was thinking Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford as tag team champions. I think that's terrific. I really think that was terrific. Clearly, we're not going in that direction, and I was kind of disappointed. In fact, listen, since we're on the topic, I was kind of surprised that no titles changed hands. After a Dynamite this week, where 2 titles changed hands, on a Wednesday night, I was thinking, there's a couple of possibilities here that you could absolutely look at, and for a title change. Like, I don't think, deep in my heart, I didn't think that MJF was going to lose to Brody King, but I did make a case for, maybe going with the flow and pivoting and having Brody King win the title, although it was, I was aware it was mostly a pipe dream, but I did think it was an interesting possibility to go down the folk hero route with him as a world champion. So I was a little surprised on the show that no titles changed hands. We were coming off of a Dynamite that had just like that was that had unexpected results, that was unpredictable. And this show felt a little more predictable. There was nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. Especially when I said in the review, when I was talking about how exciting this show felt because of the unpredictability and the surprise wins. You don't want to start doing swerves every show or every match, because then they start losing impact. And especially if you do them and they don't have any essence, they don't provide anything back to the show, and it's just for shock value. We've seen it. We saw it last year with the John Cena heel turn. If you've got nothing lined up, if there's no plan for it, it's just going to fall flat on its face. So I didn't necessarily need, the Australia show to just be chock full of surprise victories and whatnot, or be that unpredictable. Sometimes predictable can be fun in pro wrestling. Sometimes it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? But I really thought that this was a spot here, the Women's Tag Team Championship, where AEW could have decided to just switch things around, throw in a little title change here to make the show feel extra unique, and we move on. But no, look, they didn't decide to do that. What they decided to do instead was have Lena Cross show up and beat down the Babes of Wrath and align herself with the Mega Bad trio, duo, which I guess makes them a trio now, and I am all for it. Seeing those three together, right? Bane and Ford and Cross. You look at Lena Cross, and she's standing, face to face with Megan Bane, who already comes across like a powerhouse, a tower, a skyscraper amongst the women's division. Lena Cross is so much taller than her. I think she's a shoot 6'4", right? If I'm not mistaken. And she's having Megan Bane, who is perceived as this juggernaut in the division, right? That just towers over everyone else. She has Megan Bane having to lift her chin to look her right in the eyes. I'm like, fuck yeah. This is a trio that I think is awesome. I think it's great. Look, Lena Cross has been on the radar of a lot of AEW fans because of her Ring of Honor work. People got really, really excited at her size. Obviously, she's got a lot of presence. She looks good, and she's another refugee from DPW as well. Look, I have some. I have some hopes. I have a certain amount of hopes for her, right? And she's wrestled a lot in Japan. I believe she wrestled mostly for Sendai Girls, if I'm not mistaken. And she's done some Ring of Honor work. She's wrestled for GCW as well in the US. And she's been traveling. She's well versed. She's been doing this for short of 10 years. I'm just going off the top of my head. Let's see here. Let's pull up Lena Cross here, and her debut was in 2017. So not even a full decade in yet. She's 30 years old. This is the time to do something with her, right? We shouldn't pretend that she's this young up and coming rookie. She's been around the block a couple of times, and at 30 years old, well, I'm sure she's relieved at the very least that just okay, now I got a shot at the big time. Now I got to make this work. Finally, all the work paid off. I'm definitely not saying that, she's washed up or whatnot. I'm just saying, it's a good prospect for the future, not in the sense that, she's 22 years old and she's got all these years ahead of her. No, we're kind of expecting her to be a developed commodity at this point, and maybe someone that can contribute something really, really entertaining, fun, and some quality in All Elite Wrestling. So, there's a fair chance that on Dynamite this week that she has her AEW proper debut, right? There's a very good chance of that. I'll be excited to look at that. I'll be ready to embrace Lena Cross if she's I'll be ready to see it. I'm very much looking forward to see what the future holds, because this trio in and about itself right now, for me, looks absolutely fantastic. It's only look, ultimately the question is, is Megan Bayne the star of the show here? Like, between the three, is she the one that we are using this faction, I guess, to elevate? And I would still assume yes. AEW really, really likes Megan Bayne, and I am still very much on the train of Megan Bayne being the most improved wrestler of 2025. I think she's become much more TV polished and much tighter in her executions and whatnot all throughout 2025. I think she's grown into the role. I feel she's more confident in how she projects and who she is more than ever. I would assume that it's still the plan to push Megan Bayne moving forward, but if we get some interesting add-ons, some interesting additions like Lena Cross, in the meantime, I am not going to complain. We get a Ricochet promo, basically saying that basically putting the pin in the Jack Perry feud, but also in a way that feels that we're going to continue with it, and you're like, all right then, if that's your decision, type of thing. Oh wait, I forgot there was, even before that, I forgot to mention there was a Tekla and Chris Statlander promo package, I guess, a little pre-tape where they aired post-match comments from this week's Dynamite, both from Tekla and Chris Statlander. Tekla just like completely unhinged with this strap, from the strap match wrapped around her neck with the title, and just basically, essentially cutting one of these, Japanese post-match press conference promos, right? Like they do, where she just walks in, there's a camera there, and she starts just like talking and, being so hype. And, of course she's excited because she just won. And I'm like, okay, this actually rules. This rules. Tekla has been fantastic. And I can't hear anything to the contrary. She has been absolutely fantastic. And look, let's try it out. Let's try her out as world champion. We just like we did with Statlander, and see how it goes. And this is the only way we'll ever find out if Tekla was material or not, is if we actually go ahead and do it. And I have a gut feeling that the experiment with Tekla here is going to end up being more successful than the experiment that was done with Chris Statlander right up until last Wednesday. That's how I legitimately think this is going to go. And then on the flip side, you had Chris Statlander, who was like still covered in her blood, in the dark, poorly lit, and she's mad and she's upset. She's basically saying this feud must go on, right? She's talking about, and the promo that she cuts is very good. And like this angry, focused Statlander is maybe something that was missing in her presentation. As I'm watching it, I'm saying to myself, most of the Statlander stuff that we saw as she was world champion was, a little cutesy, a little fun, a little funny, just leaning into, since she's hanging around with Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron, drinking out of that energy. When maybe, in fact, a little more grit, a little tougher Statlander maybe would have gone a long way in how she presented herself, as opposed to, like I said, just being a little more, having a little more joie de vivre in what she's doing, right? I think that would have served her well, because the promo she cut here was excellent, if you ask me. I thought I thought it was very good. Now, of course, you've got the context. She's just out of the match. She hasn't showered. She's sweaty. She's got the blood all over her. So you're like, okay, like this fucking rules. Why didn't we get more of this Chris Statlander moving forward? And, sometimes this is what it takes too. Like Chris Statlander she's not done here. She's not suddenly squirreled away in AEW. There was people who absolutely lost it when Statlander lost the title, as if she was going to be relegated to the bottom of the card. Now this isn't WWE. It's not the way they work here. I can absolutely see another title reign for Chris Statlander. I can absolutely see that. And they did. It's not as if the booking wasn't on her side. They did good by her. Remember, she won the title at the 4-way match a few months ago, right? And then immediately after, Toni Storm comes back and is like, look, you won the title, but you didn't beat me, right? So they had the immediate rematch with Toni Storm, who was the previous champion, who hadn't lost the title officially because it was a 4-way, and Statlander won. And they clearly established that, okay, Statlander is the real deal. She didn't win this title out of by a fluke because it was a multi-person match. She can also stand with these top women of the division. And then they had her defend against Mercedes Moné and beat Mercedes Moné. And then they had her defend against Jamie Hayter, who is a former women's world champion in and about itself. It's not as if they just had her wrestle the scrubs of the division. They were giving her the top wrestlers. They were giving her the top people of the division. And they gave her like 140 plus day reign. That's a good reign. Like, they tried with Chris Statlander. I don't think it was immensely successful as I think we actually saw reasons as to why maybe things that we still need to work on in regards to Chris Statlander and her presentation to make her feel like a big time world champion. But I'm not going to sit here and say that it was a failure. And I'm not going to say that she wasn't given all the opportunities to succeed. She was. It was a success, and she was given those opportunities. Now, it didn't set the world on fire, but I don't think anyone's going to say this was a bad reign. I don't think you can say it was a bad reign. It just wasn't as compelling as you might have thought, or that people might have thought going into this. So, I think then moving on and trying with Tekla is an excellent idea, and I'm excited to see how Tekla's reign is handled and how that goes. Then we had Hangman Adam Page defeating Andrade El Idolo to become the #1 contender for the AEW World Championship. This was very good, very, very good match. I mean, what are you gonna do? Two all-star athletes, two all-star big-time wrestlers going at each other. And I think the people saying, oh, well, there was no question that it was going to be Hangman, clearly hadn't been watching the past couple of weeks of Dynamite, because we said the exact same thing when Andrade fought Swerve. It was like, oh, there's no question it's Swerve. Boom. And then when Andrade fought Kenny, it was, oh, there's no question it's Kenny. Boom. So it was really smartly put together in that aspect. It was really, really smart the way they presented this. Whereas in the past few weeks, Andrade has been, for all intents and purposes, landing upsets over people. And now we get into this match here where Hangman is essentially where Hangman is essentially the favorite, but you just might never know here. But it turns out it was going to be the Hangman who was going to win. I mean, then at the same time, that was really the most logical one. It was the one because look, MJF was holding on to the title. The only way this was going to go is if Andrade moved forward and then Brody King moved forward, right? And that would have been a very weird main event for Revolution between you and I. Well, you could have argued that, MJF could have regained his title, so on and so forth. Anyway, I don't want to get into that because now there's no point in doing it, because now we have the reality, we have the facts. There's no point in saying what could have been at this point, So, but basically it had to be Hangman, since Max was going to be the champion at Revolution. It had to be a big babyface, and we're revisiting a seminal feud in the company as well, between the protagonist and the antagonist, the true hero of the promotion against the promotion's real villain. So, of course, it all makes sense, and I'm completely okay with that. And it was a good match. Yeah, it was a very, very good match. I gave it like 3 3/4 stars match, and they're throwing each other around and being strong and physical with each other. And they even they have another plant for Andrade, who even gives him a peck on the cheek this time as he's taking a picture with her. And then the Hangman shows up and says, I'll take a picture with you too. And then he takes a picture with the plant, and the crowd goes nuts for it. And then she says, I'll give you a kiss. And he says, no, I'm a married man. You're like, okay, all right, there you go. That's the Hangman, right? Just like honorable and pure. And then we wonder why people have, weird expectations when it comes to this guy. Anyway, the match goes fine. I thought it was very good. We're doing springboard Spanish flies and whatnot. It's very good, very hard hitting, tremendous match. And then Don Callis distracts the ref to allow Andrade to low blow Hangman, but Hangman blocks the low blow and instead hits one of his own, which he's done in the past. He's done before, even as a babyface. He doesn't, it's like, oh, you want to do it? Fine, I'll do it to you, bonk kind of thing. Hangman won't do it without provocation. It's like, oh, this is where you want to, it's basically this is how you want to play. I can play dirty too, bonk. And even what I found interesting in the match, usually I don't have commentary on very loud, but it was, I was listening to it here. And early in the match, I think it's Tony Schiavone who's pointing out that, Hangman Adam Page is not above playing dirty to win a match because we've seen it before. And then Excalibur goes, oh, of course, seminal feud with Swerve Strickland and whatnot. And you're like, okay, yeah. So that was clearly just to remind people that Hangman is able to play dirty. He might be a honorable, sweet baby face that everyone loves, but he doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. He doesn't mind drinking the blood of other humans to get his point across. 3 3/4 stars. Good match. Buckshot following the buckshot lariat, following the low blow for the win. Then we get the hair versus hair tornado tag team match where Tony Storm and Orange Cassidy defeated Marina Shafir and Wheeler Yuta. Fun match. Look, there's not really much to break down in the match. It was fun. I thought it was interesting, and it started off hot, to get the crowd into it. The baby faces attacked the Death Riders as they were doing their entrance into the arena. Doesn't Wheeler Yuta's Death Rider theme fucking rock? I think it might be my second favorite. I think it might be my favorite, right up there with Dan Garcia's. Right? I think it's absolutely fantastic. Anyway, it starts in the crowd and I'm excited because we're getting the split screen. You got stuff happening on both sides of the screen and I'm slapping my hands. I'm going, all right, let's go. This is the kind of shit that I'm into. I love this stuff. This was a lot of fun. And Tony Storm eats a big pile driver on road cases, which incapacitates her and she gets carried back by medical professionals and Luther dressed as an old-timey barbershop dude. But she comes back soon enough. Like they don't wait till the very end of the match for her to show back up. She pops back soon enough. It was just to get some heat on Utah. And they have a good little match, like a lot of fun. Just entertaining, good for what it was. I thought everyone worked hard. It like when I say a fun little match, it wasn't like just straight up comedy throughout the whole way. There was a lot of good work in this and a lot of intergender stuff. I think this is how AEW decides to get away with doing intergender matches, is doing these occasional mixed tag team match. It's kind of like my brains, they're kind of mixed. My mixed match, God damn it. Mixed tag team matches. I'm going to leave all of this in just because I have a humiliation fetish. I don't know. We're not removing that. So I think this is how they kind of get away with it and sort of scratch that itch that I know that a lot of AEW fans love. They want Tony Storm to fight men and all of that. So we kind of get some of that here, and it ends with an orange punch and a Storm Zero on Utah to secure the victory, and he gets his head shaved off. And here's what I liked here. Here's a little, and I'm sure you all enjoyed it as well. Utah's like, fuck you guys. I'm not doing this. I'm going to shave it myself. And he's hitting the bricks. He's heading over to the shower. He's like, I'm done here. But Jon Moxley shows up from the audience and he stops him. He's like, kid, you lost. You got to go suffer the consequences of what just happened. You got to man up, brother. Hit the ring and take your punishment like a man, type of thing. And Wheeler sort of protests. He goes, come on, man. And in a way where it's like, oh shit, John, I can't say no now. I can't say no to you. And Mox is like, come on, get in there. And I like that little bit of storytelling where Wheeler Yuta is still he's still a little weasel, but Mox is there to keep him honest, where it's like, look, this is a learning experience. You lost, man up. I like that. I thought that was fun. And so then they proceed to the shaving and whatnot. Of course, they sort of shave him very goofy, or they do most of the top and not the sides. And Mina Shirakawa is there, and she gets she snips off some of the hair, and Luther snips off some of the hair, and so does Orange, and so does Tony Storm. Orange actually shaves quite a bit, and Luther as well. Fun little match, a good little breather. A good little breather before we head into this next fucking match. The TNT Championship ladder match. Kyle Fletcher successfully retained the title by defeating Mark Briscoe in one of the better ladder matches that I have seen in a long time. Well, there's multiple reasons for that. The first reason was it's a one-on-one, clean as a sheet match, not with tons of people interfering and whatnot, people getting involved. And, and we're not focused on, since it's no disqualifications, we're going to use all sorts of weapons and gimmicks and tables. No tables were pulled out. We were focused on the ladders, and the ladders were always used as weapons. It wasn't always just a question of trying to build the wackiest, setup so that people could fly off of it. No, there was a true to form grittiness in this match that made it feel brutal, that made it feel rough, and I was into it. And that's saying something from a guy who was officially burnt out on ladder matches for a long time. But I did say in the preview, we haven't had a ladder match in AEW for a while now. I wouldn't say like an eternity, but it's been a substantial amount of time between the last ladder match and this one here. Whereas there was a time where I felt like every month AEW would give us a ladder match or whatnot. And when those ladder matches would happen, they'd be multi-man matches, and then they become spot fests. And then people are just trying to outdo each other and ultimately putting themselves in positions where they're just going to get hurt, like seriously hurt. In this circumstance here, that was not the case. Well, I mean, they could have gotten seriously hurt, but the focus was on telling a wrestling match that involved ladders, and I appreciate that. The ladders were not the centerpiece of the match. The ladders were used to inflict more harm on the other guys. If you understand, I don't know if you get the nuance, because I'm sure you can think about matches where so much emphasis is put on the ladders and using ladders and throwing ladders and jumping into ladders and tossing ladders and ramming with ladders and ladders and ladders. Now it's like, okay, the ladders are just used in these very strategic spots, like to hurt the other guy, like Mark Briscoe being lawn darted into the ladder, right? Which caused him which was the excuse for him to blade, right? The ladder, the velocity with which Kyle Fletcher launched him into the ladder just like flew, and I thought it was going to land into the audience. That ladder fucking flew, brother. And that was a big spot early on. The froggy bow onto a ladder bridge. That was pretty impressive. The J driller onto a ladder was also another ladder bridge as well. That was crazy. And we're doing power bombs onto the ladders and whatnot. But of course, the big spot that I still can't believe they did, right, is the brain buster off the top of the ladder, at the top, very high up on the ladder, right? Fletcher does a brain buster on Mark Briscoe. And it might not be the most spectacular spot you've ever seen, right? And I'm talking like spectacle, the Matt Hardy swanton, that kind of off the ladders, that kind of stuff. Things where you're like, that's spectacular. I've never seen anything like this, right? This move had so little margin for error. I want you to, if you haven't already, because you might have, because you're an A+ audience listening to a D-list podcast, the margin for error in this situation here, I want you to think about it for a second. I want you to think about everything that could have gone wrong. They don't get the proper elevation, they don't get the proper elevation. Fletcher teeters back a little more, a little too much. Mark Briscoe doesn't tuck his chin in good and well enough. There's so many things that could have just gone wrong by happenstance here, just by pure bad karma, but didn't. This thing here, this power bomb, this brain buster, off the ladder is one of the most insane spots I have ever seen in a ladder match, and this one is going to stick with me. Because again, we're not trying to do something flashy. We're doing what Kyle Fletcher is trying to do is hurt Mark Briscoe in the context of the wrestling match, of course. We're talking kayfabe here. In kayfabe, he's doing everything he can to hurt him. So he's not going to do something flashy. He's not going to do something wild. He's just going to lift him up on the ladder and drop him on his fucking head. That's the plan. And I'm like, and I can get behind this, and I get it. And it's brutal, and it's awesome, and it is one of the most crazy things I have ever seen anyone do in a wrestling match. Just absolutely bonkers shit. To be expected from a guy like Mark Briscoe. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, imagine how much trust he puts in Kyle and how good this fucking kid is, that this vet is like, yeah, I will put my life in your hands, Kyle, because you are a fucking pro. It's insane. It's an incredible spot. It is an incredible spot. It is one of the most fantastic things I have seen all fucking year. Now, my main problem with this match is that it didn't finish the match. Now, I'm not one of these guys, and by experience, where I'm like, where you hear people, one of these guys who say, oh, well, the top rope, insert name here of the move, should have ended the match because sometimes I agree. Most of the time I don't, because there's a lot of times where these super powerful moves don't end a match, and there's all sorts of reasons for that, right? And sometimes you're like, well, because they went into this even better finish, and then I can excuse a lot, right? But of course, like, by pure logic, the brain buster is Fletcher's finisher. If he's doing it from an elevated position, it should not only end the match, but end Mark Briscoe. Mark Briscoe should be selling this injury for the next 3 weeks on television type of thing. That's how it, honestly, that's how it should go. But when it didn't finish, I sat back and I was rubbing my hands together. I was going, okay, what do you got in store for us then, boys? And then the match ends just after Mark Briscoe brings in a ladder, and both guys are on top of the ladders, one next to each other, and Kyle Fletcher sort of shoves him off. And I'm like, oh, that's the finish? No, that sucked. That's not a good finish. The brain buster ultimately should have been the peak. The boys should have had an audible there and say, yeah, no, we're finishing the match here. Whatever they had decided, whatever structure they had decided after to continue doing, they should have just gone, yeah, no, we're finishing this match. We're done here. This is good. And Mark Briscoe then sells it like death. And then you don't see him for 2 weeks on Dynamite. And when he does show back up, he's got a fucking neck brace on. Because it is an insane move. We've got we had the Will Ospreay story with the Tiger Driver 91, 92. I can't remember which iteration of the Tiger Driver. The one where, he killed Bryan Danielson with, right? So, we did that for weeks, months even, where it's like, don't do it, Will, you're going to ruin his career. This is a career ruining match, a brain buster off of 6 feet, 9 feet off the ground, whatever. That's a career ruining move right there. You know what I'm talking about? Like that, honest to God, look, this is to me a 4.25 star match. Nonetheless, even with the finish that I didn't care for. Imagine how high I would have rated this if they had ended the match at the peak. You know, I feel disappointed in that regard because this was terrific. God damn, this was a good match. Just brutal and it felt like this Game 7. It felt like the end of the unannounced best of 7 series that these guys have had. It just felt special on this card. And it is the match of the night. And right now, look, we're in February. Okay, we're in February. And right now, Kyle Fletcher is in early contention for Wrestler of the Year, right? Or most outstanding if you go by the Observer standards, as opposed to the Luthez, which includes the business aspect of it, right? But early on, right now, just use your fucking brains for a second. Why am I getting angry? You know, why am I getting mad at you? That was just gratuitous. But if you think about it for a second, Kyle Fletcher just came off of Wednesday, like 5 days ago, 4 or 5 days before this match here, with an incredible match with Tommaso Ciampa. And he comes into this match here with Mark Briscoe and has another just crazy balls to the wall match. So already Kyle Fletcher is taking ownership of 2026 and saying, yeah, this just might be my year. This might be mine this year. He got all sorts of accolades last year and so on and so forth. But look, listen to, he got all sorts of accolades, you know, number 2 in the FSM 50, and just everyone seems to agree. Like even the fucking ESPN list, was it the ESPN list? Even they had to acknowledge that Kyle Fletcher was the best fucking wrestler of the year. I don't even remember. What was it? Look, it doesn't matter. He even on in lists on outlets that are usually skewed towards WWE, you know, lists that say that Dominic Mysterio is the number 1 wrestler of the year and all this kind of bullshit, they will nonetheless have to acquiesce that Kyle Fletcher is fucking special. You know, I can tell you right now, as of right now, I am currently juggling my number 1 spot and number 2 spot for the best 30 under 30 Voices of Wrestling list, which we're going to be getting into very, very shortly. We're going to start the voting process. We're going to start doing our little write-ups and whatnot. He's in my top 2. And he's inching higher and higher. We're getting a better case for his number 1 spot with matches like this, concurrent, like not even within a week's difference. Brother, get into it. Get into Kyle fucking Fletcher. Get a backstage segment that followed with Kazuchika Okada and Kyle Fletcher. Kazuchika Okada, we learned that he had agreed not to interfere in Fletcher's match. Fletcher was appreciative. Okada says it's all my pleasure, and Kyle then offers up, because the two of us together we are Proto Okada, and that's not going to go over well with Konosuke Takeshita. I'm telling you, folks, we're not done with this Okada Takeshita feud, and Takeshita is going to get a big fucking win. It's going to be such a tremendous win. We've already talked about that. And then to wrap it all up, MJF successfully retained the AEW World Championship by defeating Brody King, who was greeted with fuck ice chants from the audience when the bell rang. I watched the replay, as I mentioned earlier. I watched the replay, and none of it was censored. They were clear. They were clear as rain. It could not be any clearer, folks. Let me tell you. But they also didn't censor the Utah's a shit cunt chants either. So, take that for what you will. This match was a lot of fun. I thought it was very, very good. I think the overall reasoning that MJF was going to win, it was kind of unmistakable, especially after Hangman winning the number 1 contendership. I think that really did telegraph it. I think that kind of took away from the drama of the match, but these guys worked incredibly hard and they worked incredibly well together, with, of course, Brody King coming in and just manhandling Max to start, and Max trying to play mind games and whatnot. He was ready. He wasn't going to get suckered like last time. He was ready for this, and he even starts targeting Brody's knee when he sort of buckle bombs. He throws Brody into the turnbuckles, and Brody tweaks his knee. So that becomes then the centerpiece of MJF's strategy, where he just goes after the knee. Great job selling by Brody. Oh, it wasn't a buckle bomb. It was a whiffed cannonball attempt, come to think of it. And they're doing, they're doing a lot of usual Brody spots, the crossbody into the barricades on the floor and the hanging sleeper hold. There was this incredible spot where MJF dives and Brody catches him, and then Death Valley drivers him into the barricades like viciously, and in a way where Max actually falls on the concrete. And that was an incredible spot. And Max was extremely good here. Max, I found, again, just commands the ring. He's so good at what he does. Generates really good heat with the audience. I thought he was fantastic. Tries to use the Dynamite Diamond ring, but Bryce Remsburg is onto him. Max, here's a piece of advice. You gotta stop having Bryce Remsburg officiate your matches, because this is not the first time he tries to catch it with the diamond ring. He knows what's up. So Brody at some point hits the Gonzo bomb, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, he hits it proper, but MJF kicks out. A bit of an emphasis on he being probably the first person to ever kick out of it. MJF then slams Brody after they struggle on the apron. He sort of has him in a tombstone position, then slams him forward, rolls him back into the ring for the heat seeker, and that puts Brody King away. Despite Bandito being out on the floor, Bandito shows up at some point in the match where Brody is in the Salt of the Earth thing. I think it was the salt of the earth, or no, he was just in he was just in a sleeper hold. I remember the match. He was in a sleeper hold on the floor, and couldn't get out, and he was slowly passing out. So Bandito shows up, and he's like, "You told me before, don't give up. So now you can't give up," and that sort of energizes everyone. And Bandito sticks around for the rest of the match, but he doesn't really interfere. He doesn't do anything else other than this nice moment between partners, buddies, sticking up for each other, bringing, showing that they have this connection. I still don't understand why people thought, why there suddenly was this discourse that Brody King was going to turn on Bandito, because I don't know. I still don't understand it. I think it's a good pairing, and they should continue doing that for a bit. That being said, a good main event, like a solid 3.5 star main event. I mean, nothing wrong with it. Good, very good, actually. I was thoroughly entertained. I thought everyone worked hard. I think the drama of Brody not standing a chance for a victory here sort of took a little bit away from the match, especially. But then again, like I talked on the preview, AEW is such in a mood these days to sort of subvert our expectations and to do things that we were not anticipating, that I was like, okay, well, maybe they will decide to do it. Maybe they will decide to pull the trigger on it. And after the match, Hangman Page shows up to go nose to nose with MJF, and he signs his world championship contract for Revolution. And MJF flinches at a fake punch that Hangman was about to throw. He just completely faked them out, and so there you go. So MJF still might be a little worried about the Hangman. I'm sure we'll hear more about MJF and the Hangman this week on Wednesday Night Dynamite, and that's the show. A terrific show. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you just take the 2 hours and 30 so minutes to sit down and enjoy it. It's a good watch. It's a fun watch. AEW is so good, and if you can only watch one match, it has to be Kyle versus Mark Briscoe. Just an outstanding piece of business. So there you go. The Grand Slam Australia 2025 is a big old thumbs up from Mr. Warren Hayes. New Japan Pro Wrestling held their New Beginning in Osaka 2026 show a couple of days ago, as I'm recording this on on February 11, 2026. We're going to be reviewing it now. A show that I'm going to tell you, folks, I don't know what to do with New Japan Pro Wrestling anymore. I really don't. Look, I understand that progress isn't necessarily a straight line. But when you've been watching, such as myself, New Japan over the 2, maybe 3 years that have passed, consistently avoid making decisions that deep inside yourself you know would create interesting situations and would probably help reignite a spark that maybe isn't quite around anymore, where new people could take the role of driving the company forward, as your old generation from the golden era of New Japan have all gone away or all retiring or whatever, and the company refuses to do so. You can create all of the booking situations in your head as you want. You can try and say, oh, well, they're probably going to do this. Oh, well, they're definitely going to go down this way. And with all of these scenarios that you've created for yourself, thinking about how New Japan is going to capitalize on this strength and this strength and this strength and then end up not doing it, I don't know why I would look at things that are happening, or that happened, I should say, on the New Beginning in Osaka 2026, and feel optimistic that, oh, well, these are all launching points, because we're going to go in the proper directions over the next couple of months. This is a thought process I cannot get behind, and that I'm hearing quite a lot. And I feel like, look, as the kids say, this is a lot of cope, I believe. New Japan should not have earned your trust over the past couple of years. If anything, you should be questioning every decision that they make. And if a decision seems bad to you, well, you should be worried. You should then be calling it out as, oh God, here we go again. With this show, they came in off of a Wrestle Kingdom season that let a lot of people super optimistic with what 2026 had in reserve for the company, myself included. Even though I tried my best to keep them at arm's length, there was a lot of stuff that happened, at the New Year Dash show, and even on the tour, the Road to Tour to the New Beginning. Lots of really interesting stuff and some good ideas, some good stuff where you're like, maybe they're finally putting it together. Maybe they've got something here. And the New Beginning in Osaka show was going to be the kickoff point. And I think everyone should have perceived the New Beginning in Osaka show as the kickoff point, as the moment where New Japan shows to you, proves to all of us that they have their mojo back to a degree, that they do have some interesting things cooking. As it stands right now, I'm not quite sure what New Japan truly has cooking right now. I don't know if I should put my faith in them or not. I've been down this road. I've been burnt before. Yeah, the same thing. Look, exactly 1 year ago, or close to, last year's New Beginning show was an excellent pro wrestling show and set up everything wonderfully to a degree that was an excellent wrestling show that had the Hiroki Goto win, had that excellent time limit draw between Yota Tsuji and Gabe Kidd. And Gabe Kidd was coming off of an excellent showing just earlier in the year against Kenny Omega. He was coming off of that match of the year, essentially, where everyone saw great things for him. And the whole show in and about itself felt reinvigorated. Everything felt really great. And New Japan completely failed to capitalize on most of the things that happened on that show to make the promotion feel exciting and fresh. Now, 1 year later, I came in with the same type of expectation, or expectation maybe not, same type of hope, despite, being, like I said, despite holding the promotion at arm's length, but at least saying to myself, they've got all sorts of opportunities here to lead into some really exciting directions. And instead I have some interesting things that happen. Don't get me wrong, but there's some stuff that happened that just left me either completely indifferent or just had me flipping the tables, wondering what the hell are they thinking again. And as I'm chatting with people and people who are very, very much into New Japan, it's the same situation where everyone right now is it seems to be in a mode where it's like, oh, well, without using so many words, let it play out. They probably have plans for this and so on and so forth. But I don't know how anyone has any faith in New Japan's creative, because they are doing exactly what they've been doing for the past few years. It's a heat promotion, folks. It's a heat promotion. It's all about the bad guys, the heels doing really disruptive and to some degree bizarre stuff to create heat for themselves, as opposed to working to trying to get some baby faces over. I don't understand. There's a lot of things that I don't understand about this show, and I didn't even hate that show all that much. It's not even a question where I was watching the show and throwing tomatoes at it and trying to get everyone off the stage, with one of these huge vaudeville, canes or hooks, to come and drag people off the stage. It wasn't even that bad a show. But I don't get what they're doing, and I feel like this is this was an opportunity for a best foot forward situation, and instead what we got is just a lot of puzzling things and caveats. That's it's a show that is chock full of asterisks that I'm going to go through, of course, because I'm going to review it. But I promise I don't know what to do with this promotion anymore. I don't know. Some things would feel like layups, and other things are just like you don't even understand the sport they're playing. So the Edion Arena in Osaka, of course, the big one, right? 5,507 tickets were distributed. This was a nice big house for themselves. They did declare didn't they declare that this is a sellout? And good for them. I think they did declare this a sellout. Was this on the off the backs of Jake Lee and Yota Tsuji? Maybe look, as far as Yota Tsuji as a draw goes, right? Because that's going to be obviously a question that we're all going to be asking ourselves. Look, I mean, if you want to start making that argument, we're off to a great start. Is Jake Lee a draw? No, I don't think so. Historically, he's not. It could be something completely different in New Japan. But historically, Jake Lee, in all the promotions in which he has held the top title, he has never moved any business whatsoever. Is it a little bit of the Aaron Wolf effect? Maybe. That could be, that definitely could be a contributor at the very least. Because during the show, President Tanahashi showed up and basically to announce that that Dominion this year was again going to be held in Osaka Joe Hall, and it was going to be broadcast on television. And this is happening more and more with New Japan, that the shows are being broadcast on TV, which is great for them. And but not necessarily an end, but in this situation, I think you can absolutely point to the presence of Aaron Wolf on the card. I don't think there's anyone else really over the past couple of years that would have created the business that New Japan needed to suddenly be aired back on terrestrial television in Japan. I think it's preposterous. I think you can look. Aaron Wolf gets signed by the company. Next thing you know, you hear that there's going to be matches from Wrestle Kingdom that are going to be broadcast on terrestrial TV, and it's going to be like this huge event. Like put one and one together here, folks. This is it's an Aaron Wolf effect, and which is fine. That's that's part and parcel why they moved in to sign him up, because the guy's a national treasure. People want to tune in to see him. So, okay, let's go ahead and do it. Do they want to see him in the way that he was handled tonight? Hey, we'll get to that in a second. But 5,507 tickets were distributed in Osaka. That's a very good gate for them, and I'm sure they're thrilled. And I'm sure they're thrilled that they're going to get more TV time with thanks to Aaron Wolf, ultimately you want these promotions to do well, right? If Tanahashi comes out and he says, look, Wrestle Kingdom this year was a huge success, of course it was, we know. You were a contributor to that factor. At least your retirement was a contributor to that factor. And of course Aaron Wolf as well. These things go together. So you can only hope that things continue down this very positive state for New Japan, which would be terrific. I just hope that, the promotion can maintain that. Anyway, why don't we go ahead, start breaking down the card? And I feel like going from the main event all the way back down to the card. So we'll do it in reverse order. The more interesting talking points are all are kind of per usual, mostly at the top of the card. But it's an eventful show. It's an eventful, newsworthy show, regardless of how I feel about it. This was a show that has a lot of things to talk about. So let's go right ahead with the main event, where Yota Tsuji successfully retained the IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Jake Lee. Look, Jake Lee stinks. I've been nothing but consistent on that point. I've kept telling people Jake Lee stinks, and he is not for me. And by God, I think he's found ways to eat at me much more than he has in the past. He was absolutely fucking unbearable in this match. I swear to God, I could not stand him. And just thinking about the match still is making my fingers curl. This was a 23-minute match. When I saw that it was 23 minutes, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this felt like 35. This match just would not finish. I was so sick of it. I was sick of fucking Jake Lee and his gangly, lethargic ass, going around the ring and doing pro wrestling and do storytelling, and look at his facials. He's so compelling. That as commentary would try to sell over and over again. There's nothing compelling. What was compelling about him? Did he suddenly develop a personality because he's only wearing one colored eye contact? Is that why? Because one of his eyes is of a different color? Is that suddenly makes him compelling? Jesus Christ, this fucking guy. I swear to God, I cannot stand him. I cannot stand the man. And the final stretch just blows the mind of anyone watching pro wrestling on a seriously, who watches it with any appreciation for the sport, where he's starting to no-sell offense, right? He's no-selling curb stomps, and then he starts jumping up and doing waving his arms around and acting like a toddler who just had too much hot cocoa, right? Who's on this fucking chocolate combination sugar rush, right? And he's just going around doing absolutely insane, crazy shit. Where I'm like, this is the title that carries weight, that people wanted to see come back, that Yota Tsuji made a promise to, that he was going to bring this back and he was going to make it feel important, that this was the legacy of New Japan and so on and so forth. And this is what we get instead. We get a fucking guy that should be relegated, I should say, to doing dopey comedy matches in the opener. That's what he should be doing with this fucking, finger wags and all that goddamn bullshit. I could not believe what I was watching. I could not believe what I was watching. It was incredibly infuriating. So this kind of goes to my point where, like I said, in the lead up to all of this, into, even into Wrestle Kingdom, heading into Wrestle Kingdom, these were all promises that Yota Tsuji was making, how he was going to restore the world, the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. He was going to bring back the old belt, and he was going to fight for New Japan and help bring it back to what it used to be. And his first fucking defense is against the fucking Raggedy Andy doll that is Jake Lee. And Jake Lee is putting on, he's putting on latex gloves and sticking his fingers in his mouth and going, this is this the message you're sending? Is this it? The message that you had been sending out was, we are going to restore, greatness. I'm going to make sure that this is, that the IWGP title is once again the most coveted in the world. And we start with this bullshit, with antics, with nonsense. Jake Lee walking around, again, lethargically, no energy, a glazed look over his eye with his fucking little goatee, taking breaks under the pretext that this is psychology. Oh, what great character development we're doing here. He fucking stinks. He stinks. And unfortunately, dragged down Yota Tsuji to his level in this goddamn match. This first defense where Yota Tsuji should have been able to flex all of his main event attributes here, but no, we had to make way for this goofball. This fucking goofball. I hope that after this, the creative minds in New Japan look at this and they say, yeah, you know what? We're not going to put this guy in a main event spot for a long time, for a really long time. I don't understand how he was here in the first place. I don't understand how Jake Lee manages to be a top guy in All Japan, a top guy in Noah, and then is challenging for the world title in New Japan, while this guy is boring. He's uninteresting. He's an average wrestler at best and has never moved business ever. Farcical. This is a 2-star match. That's what it is. I've seen a lot of people, there are people who are much harsher on this match than I am. I don't think this was it wasn't a terrible match from a wrestling standpoint. For the bit of wrestling we did get in here, the guys did their things competently. They did their moves. Nothing was botched. The match didn't come apart at the seams, with people missing their cues, or the stuff where you're like, man, okay, all of this is ruinous, right? All of this is just terrible. But where this match completely leaks, where the leak in this match is the lack of energy. It's the lack of action and really truly cohesive stuff that you should be finding in a New Japan main event. That's all there is to it. And to everyone, my pals, who were sort of getting on the Jake Lee side as he was developing his character over the tour. It's like, I don't hate this Jake Lee. I hope you all got a fucking glass of cold water to the face with this. I hope you've all reconnected with reality, because that shit stunk. This was Jake Lee stinks, and I hope he stays away from the main event for a long fucking time. But I don't trust this company. I don't. They haven't given me a reason to get back and really trust them. I do not trust them. So there you go. There's a two-star main event in your boy's opinion here. And very quickly after the match, they did when I say they, I mean Yota Tsuji got all of the Unbound company into the ring, and they gave Hiromu Takahashi a send-off because it was his last match in New Japan, at least for now. He'll be, I'm sure you've heard by now that he is leaving the company. New Japan made it official. They made it official maybe like a week ago, 10 days ago, something to that effect. So we'll talk about the match in a little bit, but they had that nice little send-off that had Yuto Ice crying, which I thought was, which I think caught everyone by surprise. But there you go. His time in he'll show back up in New Japan at some point. Anyway, let's move on. Speaking of Yuto Ice, the Knockout Brothers defeated Shota Umino and Yuya Uemura, and in the match of the night. Thank God for this match. This rocked. This was absolutely fantastic. The Knockout Brothers, of course, retained the IWGP Tag Team titles. Just a fantastic main event. Hard hitting, well put together, and the entirety of the match essentially revolving around incapacitating Oscar, right? That was Oscar. That was the whole movement here, where we're trying to just break Oscar down, the knee, the neck, so on and so forth. Shota Umino really doing work over him, and it's really interesting because once again, Shota Umino, especially early in the match, is he's laying in strikes, and he's kicking, he's doing stuff, and when he does, he gets booed by the audience. Oscar gets some little hope spots. He fights back a little bit. He gets cheered. I promise you. I can't say this enough. Yuya Uemura has to stay as far away from the Shota Umino as possible, lest he starts let Shota Umino's heat start to rub off on him, and you don't want that. Yuya's better. He's just overall a better package. He's a much better put together wrestler than Shota Umino is. I mean, look, this was hard hitting. It was energetic. You can picture the match in your mind where you've got a guy like Yuto Ice whose main his main feature, like the thing that makes him stand apart, is how he carries himself. It's his charisma, it's his energy. He brings something to the table. And I've talked about this before when talking about Yuto Ice. What he brings to the table is very unique in this new environment of New Japan, guys, where everyone is stoic. Everyone, not everyone is necessarily, full on performative and really putting, and I say that in a good way, displaying, being very outgoing and boisterous and big and bigger than life, larger than life character, and you kind of feel that with Yuto Ice, like when he fights Shota Umino, you've got you have the two contrasts in this new generation of New Japan right there, where you have Yuto Ice having everything in abundance that Shota Umino doesn't, and that Umino gets critiqued for, that gets criticized for, doesn't have the energy, doesn't have the presence, so on and so forth. He just seems to be clocking in, doing his job, and going home. Like there's no passion to it. There's no life to it. Yuto Ice is the complete opposite, right? And Yuya is another guy that you feel could probably be a little, could benefit from working the crowd a little more, from being a little more charismatic, but he's another guy that sort of fits into a mold, right? And you're kind of like, guys, where's the spark? Where's the thing that makes me believe that you guys are larger than life? It ain't Shota Umino, who thinks that by screaming into the camera that's showing passion. This was solid. This was such a good match. This was an excellent pro wrestling match. I give it 4.5 stars, and a really interesting story on top of that, where Yuto Ice were very close to being the baby faces with the amount of abuse that Oscar took and how he was being cut off from Yuto Ice. Everything was building to the Yuto Ice to utilize getting a hot tag and so on and so forth. And the final stretch was really good with the deadbolt suplex and the Germans, and the German suplex is Oscar is a German as well, but you knew what I mean. And the brothers finally, they hit the KOB, I think that's the name of the move, to get the win. And that was tremendous. Like, it's such an excellent match. Fantastic stuff. Once again, tag teams in New Japan are doing the work. Go figure. Next, Ren Narita defeated Aaron Wolf to become the new never openweight champion in the most incomprehensible bit of booking that I have seen from New Japan in a while, particularly on this night. Incomprehensible, and not even a match. It's not even a match. It wasn't even. It was an angle. It was just one big angle where Aaron Wolf got ambushed by the House of Torture and they overwhelmed him, and eventually within this official time of 2 minutes and 8 seconds, Ren Narita landed his move, kicked him in the dick, and landed his X Factor finisher to get the win on Aaron Wolf. Now, this is absolutely preposterous, and this is probably this is the linchpin of what I was saying at the start of this review, where this company makes absolutely baffling decisions and do things that defy logic, where you just cannot understand, you cannot fathom how they decided to come to this point. Okay, let me walk you through my reasoning here. As we said previous, and as we've said multiple times in the past, Aaron Wolf is a household commodity in Japan. Everyone knows who he is. He's a mass media star. He's mainstream, and he is very likely the reason why New Japan is suddenly finding its footing on terrestrial broadcast television again. Let's not fool ourselves. This is an Aaron Wolf effect. He's a guy that people know. You see by the reactions that he was getting from the crowds. You absolutely see what they were doing. The audience were into him. They were into him at Wrestle Kingdom. They were into him again at the show here, and even throughout the tours. They like the guy. They want to see this guy go in there and kick people's asses. I have talked about this before, where he should run through House of Torture. House of Torture should not be a problem for him. They're all geeks regardless, except for Evil, but now Evil is gone. So now they are officially all geeks. This is the guy that they brought in, made a huge deal over, because they understood the value that his name had for the company. This is a guy who could create opportunities for them, like the TV stuff, and just generating interest from people who maybe haven't watched wrestling in a while, or maybe who have never even watched pro wrestling in a while. So they come in, they watch him at Wrestle Kingdom, throw this dude around and fight against his minions and whatnot, and win the title in the Tokyo Dome. That's a big fucking deal. Now what do they do? They have him fight this geek. They set him up against this geek, which he should just absolutely demolish, but it's House of Torture, so we get the clown car offense. Everyone's running around just beating him up, doing shit to him, and the geek kicks him in the balls and gets the win and steals his title. Now, if you are not a hardcore pro wrestling fan, if you are someone who's mostly casual, you look at this and you're like, what the fuck is this? Legitimately, what the fuck is this? Why is this top guy star being punked out by these nerds, by this swarm of gnats? Why is he eating shit at the hands of these people? And they know what kind of star power they have with them. They understand it. They absolutely understood what kind of star power they have with them. So what are they trying to do here? Why didn't Aaron Wolf just plow through all these guys and retain his title? Like, it's bad enough that he's going to continue to be saddled fighting the House of Torture with Evil gone, with the most talented member of that fucking stable gone. They're still going to continue and have him wrestle against these schlubs. Somehow this is all you got for Aaron Wolf. That and hanging out with Yo and Master Wato. Why is he surrounded by geeks? Clowns to the left of him, jokers to the right. And where does that lead him? It leads him to being punked out and losing his title in something that wasn't even a fucking match. If you don't think that New Japan has high hopes for Aaron Wolf and for this to work out, trust me, if you don't think that, you are absolutely wrong. But the Aaron Wolf experiment at this point, or whatever it is they're doing, it's not going to work out for him. It's not going to work out for him if he ends up in these situations where he's fighting lower card dorks, surrounded by lower card dorks, and he's not going around throwing people around. Go back and watch, I should say, the Wrestle Kingdom match. And all he does essentially is judo throw dudes. And he's judo throwing them, and the audience is cheering for the fucking judo throws. That's what they want to see from him. They just wanted to see him beat some guys up. And now, like, we're, a little over a month in, Aaron Wolf's debut and his reign as never champion, and we're already cutting this one off. We're already going down the heat route, because again, this is a heat promotion. They decided that in this circumstance here, heat was more important than putting over their biggest chance at a big time star for the company, a guy who could legitimately change the course of their business and who already has, you could argue, but could continue down that route and become the biggest star that this company has had in a long time. They decide to go down the heat run instead of building this guy as a force, as being one of these never open weight ass kickers. If you want to continue fighting the House of Torture, that's fine. That's fine. So just have him plow through them. Have him throw them into the next fucking life. When judo throw them out into the arena and into the concessions. I don't give a shit. That's what this guy should be doing. But this is what they decided to do instead. Absolutely incomprehensible booking. Absolutely mind-boggling, fascinatingly awful booking. Now, let's say we take a little bit of my emotional element out of it and we try to rationalize this. What does this mean, right? Because most of the time, match results, they have a meaning. You have to you look as to why someone won, why someone lost. What is the meaning of all of this? Okay, so there is a part of me that says, okay, they did this because they want to establish Ren Narita as a top star, as the leader of House of Torture, as the bona fide leader of House of Torture. Look, he beat Aaron Wolf type of thing, right? That's what they want to do. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but again, just like I said, they decided to go with heat first. They decided that putting Ren Narita over as the leader, a guy who will be what he is today. He's going to be, he's just a scummer. He's not a guy that's going to evolve to anything. This is what you're going to get out of Ren Narita, right? He's just going to be a scummer. That's all it's going to be for the rest of his career. A guy who has never had any impact in the company, right? But we're gonna focus on this guy here, whose future is very, very bleak, or very, very average at the least, right? You won't be drawing anything with Ren Narita. You decide to favor him. You decide to favor the angle of him being the leader of House of Torture, your most tired act, an act that I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about people trying to convince me that it's good, that, the Japanese crowds, I don't care. I don't care about if the Japanese crowds are happy about it and then they like it, good for them. I fucking hate it. I think it stinks. It is legitimately the worst part of every New Japan show I watch. Every fucking time. I find no joy in House of Torture matches. It's this. It's the same thing that they've been doing even under the guise of Bullet Club, right? Even before it became full-on House of Torture, Bullet Club was doing this. It's the better part of a decade that it's the same fucking thing all the fucking time. I lost my train of thought here. I'm not quite sure where I was going, but look, ultimately the point is that New Japan decided to privilege the House of Torture over Aaron Wolf, a guy that could potentially be a star. Instead of building him as a big-time babyface, they decided once again to go with the fucking heat. And I'm so sick of it. I am so incredibly sick of it. So that's the first thing they wanted to do, right? That's the first thing we get to read out of this, right? Is that, okay, well, they wanted to, they clearly wanted Ren Narita here, right? But you could also read a second thing out of this finish, and that is maybe, just maybe, they're telling us Aaron Wolf, he's not ready. Maybe that's the other thing they're telling us here, because I've watched a couple of his matches on the tour, on the New Beginning tour, again surrounded by the geeks and whatnot, and always caught in this House of Torture nonsense. Don't get me wrong. And I sort of shrugged my shoulders and I'm like, well, I'm not seeing this great revelation. I'm not suddenly seeing this great wrestler who will be able to carry New Japan on his back here. He's fine. Don't get me wrong, but like nothing out of the ordinary. So maybe this is a sign that New Japan is acquiescing that, you know what, as a singles guy right now, I think we might still have some work to do. He looked terrific against Evil in the Tokyo Dome, which was tremendous. Now, the question is, how much credit was this on Evil? How much did we have to put on Evil for this? If Evil had stayed, maybe if Evil had stayed, maybe Aaron Wolf would have continued his program with the House of Torture. But then at the very least, you'd find solace in the idea that Aaron Wolf and Evil would fight again and it would be good. But now he's just hanging around with all these low-level scrubs with fucking Yujiro. He's got Yujiro hanging around. He's got Yo hanging around them. Like, what are we even doing? If this is a sign, indeed, that New Japan might be telling us, well, we're not quite sure he's ready for prime time and he still needs some work, which is possible. How many matches does it? Let me take a look here. How many matches does Aaron Wolf have under his belt in his pro wrestling career so far? 15 total matches. And most of them are multi-man matches, right? Wasn't this his second? This was his second singles match, if I'm not mistaken. Just going to make very sure. Exactly. This is his second career singles match. What, were they expecting him to be Kurt Angle? Like, was that the expectation? And now he's not Kurt Angle, so it's like, I don't know what the play is here. I don't understand. So, if they are indeed telling us, and bear with me here, if they are indeed telling us that Aaron Wolf still needs some work, still needs some refinement when it comes to his in-ring, well, to that statement, I respond the following. Iron sharpens iron. If you put him in the ring with Sho, with Ren Narita, with Yujiro Takahashi, and he's wrestling with Master Wato and all of these other fucking geeks, he is not going to exponentially grow and become excellent. Now, if you start putting him on another level and you start having him wrestle guys like Yumera, guys like Gabe Kidd, Yoda, Zack, Hiroki Goto. What is Hiroki Goto up to these days? He's doing the Bishamon thing again? Are you telling me you couldn't take him aside and say, hey, we're going to give you a big time feud, champ? We're going to give you a big time feud with the Aaron Wolf guy, and you got to make sure that he looks like $1 million throughout all of this. What is Hiroki Goto going to do? He's an honorable wrestler. He loves what he does. He's a samurai. He's gonna do his thing. He's gonna do it to the best of his ability. And he's right up there. Why aren't we having Tomohiro Ishii beating the piss out of having a big man slapathon with Aaron Wolf? Why isn't Taichi involved in this? You know what I mean? Like I mentioned Yota Tsuji. He's the world champion. He's off doing other things, right? But you've got a whole set of guys who are on the mid card, right? Like Taichi, like Tomohiro Ishii, like Hiroki Goto. All guys who are hanging around in the mid card that Aaron Wolf could 100% beat and will not hurt the careers of any of those gentlemen. And all three of those guys that I just mentioned, on top of it all, would help him make him look like $1 million. And the things that he would learn, he being Aaron Wolf, the things that he would learn working with those guys in the ring live would be much more immeasurable than fucking clown car interference with the House of Torture. They are shooting themselves in the foot. I fear that's what they're doing. New Japan is shooting themselves in the foot, and they are taking a layup, something that should be an easy score, and they're making it ridiculously complicated for no reason. I don't know. Maybe this is the way to get Aaron Wolf out of the orbit of the House of Torture. Maybe. We'll have to see about that, right? Because I'm not quite sure. We'll have to see. Anyway, this was a bona fide dud. This was an angle. It was nonsense. There was nothing to this. It was bullshit. Callum Newman defeated Dave Finlay. Good match. Got to see all of David Finlay's power offense one last time. You know, here's the why, because he's gone, right? Like after the match, he bowed to the audience and everything, and he hugged Gato. It was an obvious goodbye, right? And you know, I can't help but think. I was looking at Dave Finlay wrestle, couldn't help but feel like I'm going to miss him in New Japan, because I've over the past 2 years or so. You know, when he really embraced this Savage King persona that he had, everything about his work has improved. I'm trying to find the words here, but it's not even complicated words I'm looking for. But there's a lot about his work that's improved. You know, focusing on the strength aspect of what he does, right? Going in hard, throwing guys around, suplexes, drivers, you know, all sorts of really big offense. And I don't know, look, I understand, trust me, I understand that this is probably very likely the best thing for him is to go off into a new environment and grow from there, because he had become stale in New Japan, stagnant. You know, if the IWGP World Heavyweight at the time, or now heavyweight title, if the top title if he hadn't hit the top title yet, if he hadn't won the top title at this point, I think that's the biggest sign that there was nothing else for him to do, right? It's not as if they didn't try. It's not as if Gato didn't try. I mean, Gato decided to pair himself up with Dave Finlay in kayfabe on New Japan programming, just like Gato did with Kazuchika Okada, just like he did with Jay White, but didn't quite get the same amounts of success as he did with those two previous wrestlers that he seconded. You know, so on one hand, like I said, you know, I can't help but feel like I'm going to miss him, but at the same time, I'm completely and fully aware that this is 100% the best thing for Dave Finlay to do, and it's probably the best thing for New Japan fans. I don't have a problem with this. You know, just to be very clear, I don't have a problem with this. No one should really have a problem with this. This was a good decision overall. And so, of course, Callum Newman, who is on his way to getting the biggest push of his career, he's he gets the win. He buries him, puts him away. Well, he didn't bury him. Au contraire, I found like in the match, David Finlay was very much in control for the majority of the match. I think he was quite good in what he was doing. And, Callum Newman, he's already presenting himself with a lot more, with a lot more aplomb, confidence, I guess, but there's something more than confidence, more like, assurance. That's the word I was looking for. Assurance is the word. Very assured, very self-assured. And he's got the new presentation. He's got Zane J now hanging out. Like Zane J is his young boy now. Not his young boy, but he's being seconded, right, by Zane J, and he's got the sword and whatnot. We're clear. The path for Callum Newman this year, I think, should be very clear for everyone. Then again, you don't know with New Japan, quite honestly, but the path for him is going to be very, very clear. And I have always been on this very much on the fence when it comes to Callum Newman. There was a time where I was very excited for him. Then there was a time where I was like, no, I'm completely out on him. He can. I was in a mode where it's like, okay, well, everyone keeps telling me, oh, well, he's this great talent. He has all these attributes that he can use to become a superstar. And I'm like, okay, well, show don't tell type of situation. If he unlocks the capabilities at some point, good for him, right? Are we at the cusp of the unlocking? Maybe. I like, this match didn't blow me away, but he was good. He was solid, just as David Finlay was. Good, solid, well done professional wrestling match that I really did enjoy. But I will say that he came across as a lot more assured. That's really the best way to put it. He's still super young. This confidence only comes as you wrestle more, as you find yourself more, as you find your footing. So if his deal now is for him to establish himself as a top guy, as a big time heel in the company as well, it's going to take a little time for him to find that voice, for lack of a better term, to find that poise and that personality that he's going to feel comfortable with, that's going to be a natural expression of himself. That's how most great pro wrestlers get over, by doing things that are an extension of themselves. And I think Callum Newman is ever so closer to finding that sweet spot. So, I'm at the very least, I'm not as dismissive. Now I'm interested. Now I am fully captivated by what's going to happen next. I mean, that was the situation with the angle that they ran at New Year Dash with Ospreay, where that really perked up my antennas. I was like, oh, okay, we've got something really interesting. Now they're going to try something really, really bold and interesting this year. So we'll see how it happens, and we'll see what happens. Now, I'm saying they're going to do something interesting and bold with Callum Newman, but if you go back to a year ago, I was saying the exact same thing about Gabe Kidd, and then we'll just look at the rest of 2025 for Gabe Kidd and how that went. A solid, fun, well wrestled, well put together 3.5 star match, and sayonara, David Finlay. Best of luck wherever you end up. Andrade El Idolo defeated Gabe Kidd. This was probably the most disappointing match of the show. I don't know why this felt so sleepy, why this felt off. The match, again, not a bad match, not something that you're like, no, this is terrible. Again, these guys are too good. Everything's landing. It's, everything is pulling together, but there's no spark. There's no life to this match. And I don't understand what's going on. I really didn't understand what was happening. They were just like, it felt like they were just going through motions. Like they were running through everything that they had discussed they were going to do, backstage. They were just going through the list. Bum, 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 bum. So I was watching the match and saying to myself, this is an American TV match. But then I caught myself as I was thinking that, and it's wait a second. No, this is not as good as an American TV match, especially not these days, especially not in AEW, which is on a really great roll when it comes to TV wrestling. This is not as good as American TV wrestling. This is just like your plain old wrestling, like a perfectly competent, capable pro wrestling match that, didn't even spark up with a great finish. I mean, Andrade again is very good. Andrade was, I thought Andrade was particularly good in this match. Like, he's into it. He's motivated. He's getting pushed everywhere he goes. Why wouldn't he be? Why wouldn't he be putting on the smiling face, and just being a happy camper? There's no reason for him to be upset. Meanwhile, I sort of look at Gabe Kidd and I was like, Gabe, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on, Gabe? Something is happening. Something's going on. I can't quite put my finger on it. But there's some kind of issue right now. And look, I've heard all the rumors, down in regards to what he's going to do next. There's some people who think he's going all the way to AEW. There's some people who think he's doing the dual contract. I think he's going to be leaning into the dual contract. And quite frankly, I don't know why I don't know why he'd do that. I don't know why he'd do the dual contract, because neither promotion is going to go really hard and all in on him, pardon the pun. Like, New Japan is not going to push him, knowing that he's going to jump to AEW for more money in a flash, and why would AEW decide to go full on Gabe Kidd if he might not be around for a certain amount of dates, right? So, I'm just shrugging my shoulders, exhaling, one of those doing like, I don't know exactly what kind of path was laid out for Gabe. I really feel like he should have taken one decision and stuck with one place. The dual contracts are nice and all, and I'm sure he'll be making more money this year if that is the case. He'll be making more money this year than he has in his previous years working New Japan only. But I kind of feel like he's at a crossroads and he doesn't quite know. This is not the same Gabe Kidd, folks, from a year ago, from practically at the same calendar date last year. Gabe Kidd, like I said, was on everyone's lips. Everyone was saying how great he was. Came off of the Omega match. Came off of the great time limit draw with Yota Tsuji. Excellent match. And everyone was like, this guy, the world is his oyster. He's doing the New Japan defender gimmick. The crowd is behind him. He's got everyone fired up. And then things just peter out. And again, I know he was injured for a bit during the G1. Maybe things would have been different. But this is the reality we live in today. So, and even before that, New Japan wasn't doing much with them to begin with. Wasn't doing much there. And now he's literally a shell of himself. This is not the same guy that we had last year. So I'm just wondering what the hell is going on. So anyway, this match here, this 3-star match was for the IWGP Global Heavyweight title #1 contendership. So with Andrade winning, he is going to be facing Yota Tsuji, who, let's not forget, is a dual belt holder. He will be facing Yota Tsuji at the New Beginning in the USA, which is the next New Japan show coming up shortly. So that's a thing that's going to happen. As for the rest of the card, as we get into the multi-person matches, never open weight 6-man titles, Bishamon and Oleg Boltin successfully retain their titles against the TMDK trio of Zack Sabre Jr., Ryohei Oiwa, and Hartley Jackson. This was good. I enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun. Tremendous match. from everyone involved. A great match, actually. And again, crazy to think that exactly a year ago, Hiroki Goto and Zack Sabre Jr. were main eventing this show for a championship, a world championship match. Just wild stuff. But this was a lot of fun. Would this be my second favorite match of the card? Close to it, anyway. Nothing else really pops out, quite frankly. But this was very good. These six guys have a lot of chemistry, and I kind of want to see more Hartley Jackson this year. I hope we get to see more of him. I think he's an untapped resource. The War Dragons, Drilla Maloney and Shingo Takagi defeated the United Empire duo of Great Okan and Henare. I love the War Dragons. I think these guys are great. Such a good tag team. United, and the match here was good, like a 3 1/4 match type of thing, 3 1/4 star type of thing. Good match. Nothing really to write home about. Nothing really to break down either. After the match, Julie Maloney asks for the microphone, and I was like, I got an announcement, and he's speaking in Japanese, and you've got Shingo who's holding on to his heart. It's like, oh fuck, here is this guy leaving too? But no, as a lot of us has expected, Julie Maloney is sticking with New Japan. He's not going anywhere. He re-signed, so that made Shingo very happy. The Osaka crowd reacted very positively as well. Of course, Drilla doing the smart thing, learning the language. It was a smart lad. That's a good way to help yourself get over as a gaijin with the Japanese crowd. So good for them. Nice little match. And then we had Hiromu Takahashi and Taiji Ishimori defeating Francesco Akira and Jacob Austin Young. This, of course, was Hiromu's last match. I've talked multiple times on stream and on the podcast about Hiromu leaving and how I think it's a good thing for New Japan and for Hiromu himself. And I think it'll give a good, it'll reignite the junior division at the same time, because the shadow of Hiromu Takahashi does loom large on the division. So wrestled his last match. Kind of surprised that it went this way. Francesco Akira, I think, is going to be a guy who will benefit from Hiromu leaving. They clearly want to give him some kind of push, but they had his team lose here. And I like this fiery, angry side of Akira. I've always been very high on Francesco Akira, probably higher than most people. So if this is a chapter where we head to if this is a chapter where we head into, let's say, Best of Super Juniors, and Francesco Akira essentially has the field to himself, well, I'm not going to complain. It'll be fun to get some really new, reinvigorated blood into the junior division in New Japan. More guys like this, less guys like Sho. And then we had the pre-show match. The pre-show match was Togi Makabe and Toru Yano defeating Shoma Kato and Katsuya Murashima, who is heading off on excursion. I believe he's going to Germany. If I'm not mistaken, he's doing WXW. I could be wrong. I think that's what I saw. And I'm very excited to see him return. This is a kid that I am very much looking forward to his excursion return, as he has been tremendous. Definitely a top of the class type of wrestler here. Good little match, nothing to write home about, but we do get the send off for Murashima here as well. So there you have it. That is my review of The New Beginning in Osaka from NJPW. A perfectly acceptable professional wrestling show with perfectly acceptable matches throughout, but sprinkled with some baffling New Japan booking and decision making that is kind of become the hallmark of the company for the past 3 years. A show that I thought was going to be a kickoff point to show to us the direction that they're going in and to get us excited for all of the new possibilities that are opening up with Dave Finlay leaving and Hiromu leaving, but instead we just get a lot of extremely baffling decisions and highly questionable ideas. How about that? So that's my review of the show. And that about does it for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Thank you very much for tuning in, for joining me, for listening, for enjoying. And if you did enjoy, 5-star reviews, 5-star ratings, likes, and all that stuff, subscriptions, all that stuff would be tremendous and appreciated. I will be back tomorrow, Thursday, for another edition of the weekly AEW Dynamite review. And then later on, same day in the evening, that's right, a live stream on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes. If you want to hang out, if you want to come take a look, if you haven't been around for the live streams, there's a lot of stuff that we talk about and that we go over that doesn't show up here on the podcast. These are like the big news items, the highlights. There's a lot of stuff that goes on live on stream that if you're not there, you're missing out. That's all I have to say. So be sure that you don't miss out. Otherwise, listen, I'll be back next week for another edition of the podcast. So there you go. Thank you all very much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great weekend on top of that. And I'll see you next time.